What's up, my board game friends? Welcome back to Game Brigade. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about Dark Souls, the board game. Now, this is the Sunless City core set. This is one of the newest core sets out from Steamforged Games in the Dark Souls line. This is one of their attempts at redoing and reinvigorating the Dark Souls line with several new core sets with some revised rules from the original game. I'm going to be talking about this game, giving you guys my thoughts about it, kind of seeing if this game is for you or if it's worth your time. So if that sounds interesting to you, stay tuned for that. Okay, so as I mentioned, we are talking Dark Souls, the new core set from Steamforged Games. Now, disclosures, I have never played the original Dark Souls board game. In preparation for this video, I did watch some content regarding it, getting people's thoughts about the original gameplay, some of the difficulties, the house rules that people implemented. But I'm trying to look at this product as is its own thing. It can stand on its own. What is it trying to do, and is it trying to do it well? So whenever we're playing board games, whenever we're looking at a game like this, there are several things I always ask myself when I'm watching or when I'm reviewing a game or when I'm diving in is, what is this game trying to accomplish? And does it accomplish that game or that objective well? Dark Souls, if you know the IP, is a brutally difficult strategic in the sense of timing and memorization, I would say third-person battle game where you are a knight or some sort of medievalish character, and you're going around defeating different types of enemies, eventually facing off against these large bosses. Now, the challenge that the Dark Souls video game comes into is that everything that you're facing has a specific mannerisms or abilities that it kind of does ad nauseum. They always act the same. And so the challenge or the skill part of Dark Souls, the get good mentality, is being able to learn those moves, those mannerisms, the things that the game is doing ad nauseum, on repeat, and then learning how to counter them to be efficient with your available health and life pool as you eventually try to defeat each of the bosses. Steamforged Games has attempted to bring that Dark Souls vibe into this board game. And in some ways, they have done it magnificently. In other ways, it becomes a little shaky. And, excuse me, Kitty, I'm doing a review. And it makes it kind of difficult because of the medium we're playing this in. When I started this kind of planning out my ideas for what I wanted to talk about, I thought, is the medium of what Dark Souls trying to do work well as a board game in itself? So now we've kind of had a kind of an introduction here. Let's talk about what this game's doing and how that operates so that you guys can understand if this mechanisms might be appealing to you or whatnot. At its core, Dark Souls is entirely a combat-driven board game. Almost entirely, the game is played over these battle arenas here, made out of these different types of tiles that are double-sided, which have different types of spawning nodes on them. And you are going to be battling against different types of minions. Each core set has their own type of minion. So the Hollow Soldiers, which has the crossbow hollow, the Hollow Soldier, the Sentinel, and the Silver Knight, and Great Bowman and Swordsman are who came in this game for this core set, are what you're going to be facing. Now, if you have other core sets, and if you have the original Dark Souls board game, the Steamforged Games took great care to make this game backwards compatible so that you can integrate more of your minions and bosses into the new rule set. So that's a great plus there. But as I said, the combat is the main focus. Secondary to that is the leveling up character progression experience that'll be reflected on your player board as you collect different types of equipment and skill ups and getting, general loot as you play each round. As you move across the progression bar, eventually having to face the first mini boss and then to the final boss. This game only includes the 3 bosses. You have the mini boss here, and then you have the main boss, which is reflected by these 2 minis there. So let's talk about each segment and kind of the pros and cons and the things I liked or didn't like about those segments. Starting first with combat. So combat will be taking entirely in these arenas. Now, sometimes you could have several of these tiles connected, and depending on the map, there'll be little arrows here, which indicate if there's a connecting room potentially on that section. The way that you will decide what you're going to be playing at, as you begin your journey, you will slide your progression marker down the track, and your goal is to go from the first progression track here, eventually completing 10 different scenarios to complete the game. When you reach a scenario, you're going to draw 2 of these cards. They are reflected basically in difficulty level. So you start with easy, medium, and then hard as you progress further. And these will provide different types of rewards. When you look at it, you're going to see what type of mission you're going to be facing, what is the rewards, who are you fighting against, and what are the requirements. So for example, the Kingdom's Messenger says reach the exit node. It is a 2-tile segment, and it tells you which one's the exit. The other one is kill all enemies. So you will select one of those and continue with your mission, eventually doing kind of what I have set up here. This is just something placed out where you're going to have some enemy minions as well as your spawn tokens. In Dark Souls, the enemies will always go first, and they will just deal the damage listed on their card. So here we have some crossbow hollowmen, and then we have a hollow soldier. On their boards, they have an indicator of how much damage they deal. So the hollow soldier here deals 4 damage, while the crossbow hollow deals 3, one being magic damage, one being physical damage. And then to defend that, you will reflect back to your equipment board, looking at the type of stats you have from the equipment gear you have selected, and you will roll some defense dice to see if those attacks hit. The green dice being the dodge, where you're trying to roll out of the way, and if you're unsuccessful with that, as I was here, the swords being the amount of block damage as you brunt that attack and how much you block, with me blocking 1 damage from the hollow soldier. So in this case, I would take 3 damage, which you would reflect on your player board by adding some of these skulls to the bottom of it. Unfortunately, this is all filled up. Then the crossbowman will do the same. We will roll the same as that. In this regard, I actually dodge the attack of the first crossbowman, and then the second crossbowman will deal 2 damage to me. So I'll be coming into this fight with 5 total damage on me, and then I get to activate. In this game, you will then activate, attack, rolling the dice of whatever equipment you have selected, sometimes exerting yourself to do a more heavy attack, very indicative to how the video game is in terms of what kind of attack you want to do, dealing damage, eventually killing these minions, and completing the objectives. When you do so, you will collect the rewards. Usually it revolves around drawing something from the equipment deck to equip yourself with more gear. But these gear also have different types of skill requirements. For example, I just drew a claymore randomly. This claymore requires that I have 30 strength, which right now I only have 16. It requires 26 dexterity, which I only have 9. And intelligence and faith, it doesn't have any requirements. So for me to use this, I'm going to have to level up to tier 3 in my dexterity and tier 2 in my strength. And once I've reached those requirements, I could equip my claymore, which gives me access to more different colored dice, or more dice and more effects, giving you some more options. So how do you level up? What is that experience like. One of the things that I love about games like this is the experience of collecting equipment, getting stronger, and feeling that growth potential. In this game, that is one of the core tenets, as I mentioned, is the leveling up experience. You will be collecting these souls right here, and for the cost of an item or leveling up your souls, the leveling up cost is 248. So for tier 1 it costs 2 souls, tier 2 is 4 souls, tier 3 is 8 souls. So you spend those souls to go up, and then once you've spent those souls, they'll go away, of course, and you just make the adjustments so you can get your stuff. But there is a caveat to this, and it's very similar to how the video game worked. So let me give you an example. So let's say we've gone through and we've made it through 3 scenarios. These scenarios are very quick, usually running between the 15 to 20 minute range per scenario, sometimes even 10 minutes depending on how quickly you defeat them, because most of these minion mobs only have 1 health. So it's all about you trying to blunt the damage that they take from you, that they're dealing, and then you dealing as much damage to kill as many as you can back. And then rinse repeating, going to the next scenario, etc., etc. So that's kind of the mechanics. But if you want to level up, you have to visit what is called the campfire. This is also very indicative to what the video game is like. You're going to go rest at the campfire, which you can then level up and recharge any of your special abilities that you've used, such as the healing, the lucky coin, any embers, etc. But there is a cost to doing this. The campsite only has 4 sparks for you to use. A spark is the ability to come back and actually spend it to do that level up experience and recharge all those items. So you're only able to go back and spend and upgrade 4 times, actually 5 if you defeat the mini boss. He gives you an extra spark before you meet the final boss. So there is a very big push your luck, keep going further before you decide to stop and recharge. Also though, unless you have unlocked a shortcut as a reward from one of the encounters, you must also go back to the first encounter, the one you completed the first time, and redo that one and redo each scenario until you have moved further along and either reached a scenario with a shortcut or have reached the mini boss where you can defeat him. So let's say we get the 4 just before the mini boss, and we do our level up and we go all the way back, and we go to 4, you got to go all the way back. And you're going to have to repeat those scenarios over and over. This is the grind theory that Dark Souls has in the video game. You will grind experience. You will sometimes go back and kill the same mobs over and over and over. 1, farming equipment, and 2, farming souls for your leveling up experience. This is a core tenet of this board game. If you get to, say, level 4 scenario and you die, your game's not over, but any souls that you had collected will be dropped onto that scenario, and you will go back to the starting point of the game again, level 1, and you'll have to start over and basically be minus a spark. Get back to your point where you lost your souls so you can recollect them and get them back into your inventory. This is a brutal game. It's very brutal in the sense that it challenges you to survive. A lot of times these minions, because they activate first, and then the sequencing is enemies activate, 1 player model activates, minions activate, the other player model activates, etc. So they're going to be dealing a ton of damage. Even in this scenario where I started, you only have 10 health, and I took 5 damage. I was already halfway dead before I even got a chance to activate. If you miss a roll, you could be dead right off the start of the game. It is a potential reality that this game provides. So that is the leveling up experience. The combat is where this game is really going to push you. And while this combat is simplified, the game shines just like in the actual IP in the sense of the boss battles. Now, this arena is obviously way too small for what a boss battle would look like, But the boss battle mechanics of Dark Souls is where the game really starts to get going. So for example, let's get to the final boss and kind of talk about what these guys would do. In this scenario, fighting against these guys, you're actually be fighting against both of them. There is a deck that has both of their activations on it, and you'll do the what's this guy's name? The Dragon Slayer first, and then the Executioner second. And they will also repeat the same moves in the deck. So when you reveal your deck, you'll do the thing. When you get through the entire deck, you flip the whole thing over, and they're going to repeat the exact same moves as they just did. So you're going to have a great idea of what to expect as you learn their movesets and what to expect and what they did last time. And so you're going to have to use the arena to dance around, to dodge, to try to affect them as you get through it. And then eventually, when you defeat one of the minions, depending on which one you defeat, this one has a heat up mechanic where you will grab their heat up cards, which gives them more health, which are reflected because their health is not one. The minions of these guys have 1 health. These guys have a buttload of health. This one having 30, this one having 20. And so if you defeat one, this one gets healthier, gets 10 more health on top of what he had. And then their heat up cards, which are more powerful, more effective cards. And sometimes if they have a symbol like this 3 with a symbol that goes around in a circle, means they will do this effect 3 times in a row. So imagine them just like coming and swinging multiple times at you as they're moving through. So the true combat mechanics of what Dark Souls is trying to provide to you, it shines in this part. But the problem I have with that is you only experience it here, and you have to get through a lot to get to that really, really good part of the game. And then there's going to be some people who enjoy that, who enjoy the challenge of going through the game, of unlocking special equipment, because once you defeat these guys, you unlock their specialty loot, which then can be shuffled into the loot deck for you to enjoy. And if you have other versions of the game, which you could eventually even equip and take against a different boss, opening up a whole avenue of different types of replayability options. But there are other people who are going to see the grind as monotonous, as repetitive, and not be able to actually get to the point where they're getting the true shine of this board game. As I came to the ending of this idea, I wanted to say that this game is going to be extremely polarizing. As you build up to that crescendo of what Dark Souls is building, it is very cool. But I don't think there's a lot of people who are going to have the patience to get there, and they're going to look at this game and say, not for me. And in my player group, there were people who said that, who said, not for me, just not a game I have interest in going back to. And I don't blame them. It's difficult, it's hard, it's unforgiving. The most fun thing that I enjoy doing is getting powers and abilities and feeling stronger, leveling at my player. But I'm penalized for doing so because of the mechanics of being true to the thematic nature of Dark Souls. There's other things we could talk about where I think this game shines as well. Player count is an interesting scaling mechanic. I kind of had a chart that kind of looked like this. I kind of drove it out, and I said that I think this game truly shines best at a solo experience. The downtime is very short. You go in terms of the opponents. I go. You go. I go. You go. I go. So it's really a nice tug and pull of the game. The more players you add, and this is a 3-player experience. The original core game was a 4-player experience, but this one's being a 3-player experience, means that there's more downtime because I'm going to go, then the enemies go, then you're going to go, then the enemies go, then Wilfred over here is going to go, and the enemies are going to go. Oh, and then I get to go again. So there's a lot of downtime in that. Alternatively, though, I find that the scaling of the enemies and the scenarios, there's only a few instances where the scaling of the actual decks reflected in by the amount of players that you have. Usually the rewards will give more souls, player count plus. say, so get souls per player count. So if it's only me, I get 1, plus 2 souls, whatever. But as I said, so the enjoyment factor is high, but as I add more players, it slopes down. Alternatively, though, the difficulty level is very hard, but as you add more players, it gets easier. Because you're adding in more health, you're going from 10 total health with the same amount of mini count to adding a second player. So now we've got 20 health, and if we add a third player, obviously we would have 30 health that we could juggle our threat, which is what you call when someone is taking the damage or tanking. You are juggling that threat. I'm going to take threat for a little bit, so I get blocked or I get damage. Now you're going to take threat, so you get the damage, etc. So there's a really interesting point here. If you're a solo gamer who loves this IP, I think this game could be a real smash hit for you. But if you're a gamer who's into cooperative games and you play with a group, your partner, multiple people, this game might be kind of a different taste. It really depends, again, on what you like as a gamer. Is this something that you're going to fall in love with? Is the grinding experience of getting different types of gear sets and gear and whatnot fun for you? And also remember, sometimes the gear you get might not ever be equipable by you if you're playing solo. So you're just going to have to keep going and keep killing stuff until you get something that you actually can use. Sometimes you'll be told to loot a specific item, like poison throwing darts. And my character as a warrior might be just too stupid with intelligence and dexterity to figure out how to throw those throwing darts. So they'll sit in my inventory until I can find something I can use. That's, again, part of that grinding mechanic. As I wrap this up, I think there's a few games that I find this kind of analogous with. And if you wanted to think about what I felt like playing this, the most prominent game for me was something like Too Many Bones, in the sense of that you have a day counter, here being 10, as you're trying to get to a final boss, and you're going through these quick scenarios, 20-minute, 15-minute scenarios, quick setup, defeat the boss, move on. Again, that was the closest thing. And you're also fighting on this, kind of, you could represent this board in any way, but it's, kind of a node player battle board arena, which you're sliding around these different types of nodes like that. So that might be something to check out as well. Or if you are a huge fan of Too Many Bones, maybe this might be something for you to check out and play. So, guys, I appreciate you guys for watching my review. I hope this was helpful for you guys. Let me know in the comment section down below. I would love to hear your thoughts on this one. Question of the day for this game. Are you a grinder? Are you good with that kind of mechanic? Is it something that you could enjoy playing, or is that something for video games? Is that a board game mechanic that you enjoy? My name is Brian. This is Game Brigade. Thank you for watching. If you're new here, remember to hit the subscribe button. Join the Discord. And if you really want to support me, I've got a Patreon. Check it out. I will appreciate your help. I will talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.